Well, mommy is busy, so let's finish this today. What? Yes. See you tomorrow. When I was on a business trip, I was talking to my husband and daughter on video calls every day. It wasn't until the 5th day that I noticed such a change in my daughter. I had a habit of recording and reviewing the contents of the call. When I looked back at the video call as usual, my daughter was acting strangely. I almost laughed at what she was doing, but when I looked at her expression, her eyes were not smiling, trying to convey something. When I look back at the video of the call so far, my name is Raylyn, 33 years old. It's been 10 years since I worked for a manufacturer. My husband, Daryl, seemed to be a friend of a colleague, and for some reason, he was also participating in a drinking party at the same time. I'm sorry, I'm an outsider. I was surprised at first, but it's more fun for a lot of people. That would have been nice. After that, my husband began to appear frequently at drinking parties. As we met many times, our friendship deepened, so it was quite natural for us to start dating. Of course, I think I got married earlier than others. What? You get pregnant? Yes. Well, you did a good job. Now I'm a daddy now. It's going to be a long time before I'm giving a birth. My husband is happy to have a child. At that time, I thought that my life would be good from now on. In fact, after I found out I was pregnant, my husband cared more about me than ever. But that was before the child was born. I'm sorry, I'm going to be a little late tomorrow. Tomorrow, too? You often work overtime. I can't help it, a few people have quit recently, so I have to fill in the gaps. But don't overdo it, okay? Since then, my husband has been working overtime more and more. Sometimes he come home smelling of alcohol, and sometimes I wonder if he's really working. However, my newborn daughter, Jewel, grew up quickly, as if it didn't matter. I was amazed at how quickly a child could grow up. And by the time I realized it, she was in kindergarten. Look, Jewel needs to get ready to go to kindergarten too. Okay. Then shall we go? On the other hand, my husband is... What are you doing today? Didn't I tell you I had a day off yesterday? I haven't heard of it. My bad. If it's a day off, I'll ask you to pick up Jewel, okay? Okay. I almost thought he was a child, but I put up with it and went to work. I thought he would never forget the pickup. And when I'm about to go home after work, I notice an incoming call. Hello? Oh, are you Jewel's mother? Yes, how? That's right. I'm at the kindergarten that Jewel attends. The call is from the kindergarten that Jewel attends. From what I heard, it seems that my husband did not pick her up. I immediately contacted my husband. Hey, what are you doing? What? What's the matter with Jewel's pickup? I just got a call from the kindergarten. My husband didn't seem to understand the situation at all, maybe because he was just awake. What's the matter with Jewel's pickup? Oh, I think you forgot. I'll pick her up soon. My husband seemed to finally understand the situation and was preparing for it. And here I will find out. Even though there was supposed to be only my husband in the house, I felt like I heard someone else's footstep. However, he seemed so flustered that I couldn't ask him any more details. After that, it seems that my husband picked up Jewel safely, and I'm going home too. I'm here. Then my husband runs up to me. Sorry for today, I was going to take a break, but don't forget next time. Oh, of course. To be honest, I was more anxious, but I still had no choice but to believe in my husband. However, after that, my husband's behavior did not change, and I began to think that it was useless to say more. Then, one day, something happens that will change my life for... What happened? It looks like you don't have much energy, but... Actually, I tell my husband what happened in the company today. Seriously, but you have a big chance as long as I heard. You should definitely go. Is that so? You should definitely go. Well, even though it's been 2 weeks, I'm worried about Jewel. Then I'll do something about it. I wondered why my husband was so keen on it. As my husband says, it would be better to go on a business trip thinking about the future. And after thinking about it for a while, I will be fine. Good luck with your work. Jewel, that's how I made up my mind with Jewel's words. My husband was also going to help me, so I decided to go on a business trip. And at the hotel where I was on a business trip. Hey, can you see it? I can see it perfectly. Look, come on, Jewel. We were going to have a video call after work so that Jewel wouldn't be lonely. In fact, just looking at Jewel's face will blow away the tiredness of the day. After that, we continued to talk every day. And the next day, when I was on the phone with Jewel, I noticed that she was moving her hands all the time. Jewel, what are you doing? I was told today, well, what's that? Well, I'm going to do something with my hands like this, Mommy. Do you know what? I'll think about it too. Then I remembered what I had seen on TV before. Sign language. Oh, that's what the teacher said. Hey, kindergartens these days teach sign language. But it was fun. What did you learn? Say your name in sign language. After that, we continued to talk on the third and fourth days. However, although my husband participated in the call on the first day, the time became shorter with each passing day and finally stopped participating on the fifth. What did you do today? I practiced hiragana today. Wow, that's amazing. It's still difficult. Don't worry, you'll be able to write properly eventually. It was a casual conversation and peaceful. However, on this day, my daughter was somewhat fidgety and I could see that she was restless. Jewel? No, it's nothing. I don't participate in conversations, but I'm constantly looking behind the screen to see if my husband is nearby. I used the computer that was making a video call was in the living room. Mom, and the moment she was about to speak, my husband interrupted. What were you two talking about? We're talking about what she did today. My husband doesn't seem to be very interested. When I look at my daughter, she looks more tense than before. I could feel her willingness to tell me something. When I was thinking about what I could do, my daughter was moving her hand incessantly. What is it? What's wrong? What? No, it's nothing. Well, you had a very serious look on your face. Thinking that it is dangerous, I pay attention to my daughter again. Then, as before, she was repeating the same hand movements, hiding her hands with her body. But I don't understand the intention of my daughter's actions. Look, Jewel, it's already this time, so let's do it again tomorrow. Yes, and this is how the video call ended that day. But the lonely expression on my daughter's face that I saw just before closing the screen was burned into my mind for a long time and lie down on the bed. I couldn't help but be curious and looked back at the video I had recorded. Then I realized something. I felt like I had seen a similar scene a few days ago. Then, when I looked at the recordings of past phone calls, I found out that my daughter's mysterious behavior was in sign language. And I decided to find out what my daughter wanted to say. Help me, ONG. I couldn't help but speak. My daughter was desperately coming to me for help. How could I not have noticed it? I knew I couldn't leave it like this, so I immediately called her. What's going on at this time? Actually, I told my boss about what had just happened. I understood. I have one son, so I know how you feel. After a moment of silence, my boss made a suggestion. Then I'll give you 2 days, and I'll give you some time. So even if I manage to buy some time, that's about it. Yes, thank you. I don't know what happened, but please go home early. My boss was a woman and a single mother. That's why she understood what I was thinking. That if it were someone else, it would have been impossible. And I'll be ready to go home soon. There are only 2 days left. During this time, we must find out the truth. I'm finally back. I hopped on the last late-night bus and arrived at 6 a.m. in the morning. It was good that I came with momentum, but I had no plan from now on. So I contacted my mother, who lives nearby. I'm sorry so early in the morning. It's unusual for you to contact me. Did something happen? I need my mom to help me. I was able to get my mother's help. I don't know what's going on, but I'll do what I can. I'm sorry, Mom. My daughter and grandchild are in trouble, so it's natural. I'll get in touch with Daryl. Thus begins our operation. First of all, my mother went undercover as a spy and had Jewel taken out. I waited at a nearby cafe to wait for my mother and daughter. Next, about 2 hours later, the mother and daughter appeared. Jewel, Mom. I hugged my daughter for the first time in about 6 days, and I heard the truth about that sign language. So why did you decide to communicate in sign language? I thought my dad would be mad at me, or mad at you. Did he say anything else? Yes, his friends are coming on the day my mom goes to work, so don't leave the room. I will continue with further questions. Is that friend a man or a woman? It was a woman. I see. I understood everything. He locked his daughter in a room, and my husband was having an affair with a woman. I didn't expect Daryl to do such a thing. I've been suspicious lately, and I didn't expect it. Did you notice? Somehow. But what are you going to do now? For the time being, I think that if I know the date of the next meeting, I will be able to suppress the evidence. Jewel smiled and replied, he said she'd come back tonight. Really? Yes. This was a great opportunity. I have to go home tomorrow night, so I can't afford to miss this. I'm suggesting to my mother, can you take care of Jewel at your house? That's fine, but what about you? Of course I'm going to stake it out. What? My mother went home once to get her husband's approval. Less than 5 minutes later, she was back. It's totally okay. It's just that. Then I'll take Jewel with me for now. Yes, I'll see you again then. So be a good girl. Good luck, Mommy. I decided to ambush him in a park near my house. That said, you never know when you'll find a cheating partner. Still, I will continue to wait patiently. And it was about to turn 17 o'clock. My husband came out the front door. Then I saw a woman in the lobby of the apartment hugging me. Photographed the scene. I immediately photographed the scene. I chased the two of them, and sure enough, they entered. And this is where the real work began. I gently opened the door with the key I had. Then I heard a conversation between two people from the living room. I don't have a daughter today, so don't worry. Really, you don't have to worry about your voice today. Besides, your wife is on a business trip right now, right? If I were her, I don't want a husband like you. What are you talking about, even though you're married too? The conversation between the two was too unbearable to listen to. Of course, the conversation at this time is also recorded perfectly. And while hiding so as not to be caught, I was watching the actions of the two people. Then it's time. Yes. The two of them walked into the bedroom. After confirming this, I approached with a sneak of foot and held up my smartphone. Then I opened the door vigorously. Two people who are frozen in too much event. What are you doing here? Why are you here? You're supposed to be on a business trip, aren't you? I'm back. I heard you're cheating on me. Huh? And I've got a record of everything you guys had just said and what's going on. So don't think you're going to get away with it. Then the cheating partner got up from the bed and ran out of the house as it was. What are you going to do? You can't run away from it. Listen to me first. I don't want to hear your opinion, and I've heard you've done a lot of terrible things to Jewel. It's different. Nothing is different. I'm sorry, but I'm divorcing you. Or I was about to leave the room. Suddenly, my husband tried to take my phone. Hey, stop it. Give it to me now, and if you don't have it, you won't have any proof. It's really a piece of crap that can't be saved. You can't say that. What's wrong with telling the truth to someone who doesn't even understand what you've done? Hey, wait a minute. I ignored my husband, who held me back and left the house immediately. My husband also chased me, but he couldn't do anything about it in his underwear. I went straight to my parents' house. I'm here. Oh, it was surprisingly fast. Well, there are a lot of things. So how did it go? Of course, I had the evidence. All that's left to do is to get a divorce based on the evidence I have taken. However, today I decided to prioritize my time with my daughter. And the next morning, then I'll go back to my business trip. Be careful. Good luck with your work. Thank you both. Then I'll go. That's how I got back to my business trip. I'm sorry for the inconvenience. So how did it go? My husband was having an affair. Gee, but I think you can afford it. I don't care anymore. And what's next? I'm thinking of getting a divorce. I see. Then I'll introduce you to a good lawyer, okay? I'm indebted to him. What? Are you sure? I don't mind at all if it's for a cute junior lol. I was really happy to be able to say that to someone I admired. And I came back after a business trip safely. Of course, I came back to my parents' house, not my original home. Mommy, welcome back. Did you make a good girl? Yes, I helped them a lot. After that, I went to consult with a lawyer who was introduced to me by my boss. As he said, he was very polite and the subsequent processing was quick and very helpful. Of course, my husband was not the one to divorce me so easily. I'm sorry for what I've done, so let's start over. I need you. It's too late. I can't start over with you. It's just one affair, isn't it? You can say that a lot when you've seen her just once or many times. Don't you know that there can be no revenge when you say that? What's going on from above? Oh, and I'm not only going to get a divorce, but I'm going to charge you alimony, of course, to your cheating partner. 1 week later, my divorce from my husband was successfully finalized. Alimony is also firmly claimed. I have also obtained information about his cheating partner who ran away that day from my husband, so she will not be able to escape. Also, according to my husband, the other party is also married, so of course my husband seems to be in a shambles. Even so, I didn't have any sympathy for it because it was something I invited himself. So you were able to get a divorce safely. Yes, thanks to you, I got a lot of alimony. You're bad. But you're convinced, aren't you? Then I won't say anything more. Thank you very much for this time. You're going to keep working harder. On the other hand, we're having a good time with my daughter at my parents' house. Also, I feel that my daughter is smiling more than when she lived with my husband. And I had a mission. Above all, I will protect my precious daughter's jewel.
This concludes this story. Thank you very much for listening. Please listen to the next story. Have fun.
We'll take care of ourselves. So please don't bother us. Soon after my son died, my daughter-in-law said so and declared that she would raise my granddaughter on her own. I was worried about my granddaughter left behind by my precious son, but I decided to believe my daughter-in-law's words because my granddaughter herself said that there was no problem. I decided to help them whenever they need and watched over them in the shadows. I believed that it was something I could do, but I never thought I would regret it. My name is Briella. My husband predeceased me a few years ago, and I live alone, quietly. I still feel the loneliness of losing my husband, but the sadness fades relatively quickly, and I have become accustomed to living alone. My husband had been in poor health for a long time before he died, and his doctor had told me that I should be prepared, so I had been mentally prepared for it. My husband himself knew this, and it was good for me that we were able to talk about it before he died. What was it like when we first got married, and what it was like when our son was little? They were all really small things, but I think it was a time like that that allowed me to sort out my feelings. That's why I cried sadly when he died. But after his death, I was able to be positive that I would be the one to watch over my son. My son was still young and had never been seriously injured or sick since he was born. He himself said that his asset was his healthy body, and I felt that I could rely on him and that I was the one who was being taken care of. However, Sachi passed away the other day. I thought that my son would never die before me, so I was more confused and sad than when I lost my husband. I was reminded that no matter how healthy you are, you never know what life will bring. My son died in a car accident when a truck driven by alcohol crashed into the sidewalk. I think it's something we see on TV on a regular basis. Until then, every time I saw a news report on TV, I thought it was tragic, but I felt like it was a fire on the other side of the river. But it was only when I realized that it was something that happened in real life. The price was my son's life, so it was very indivisible, But what is the saddest more than anything else was that he had a wife and a daughter. My son, who got a job at the same time as graduating from university, got married to Roz, whom he met at the workplace about a year later. The following year, their daughter Galilea was born, and she is now attending elementary school. Of course, I am sad that my own son had passed away, but more than that, I was worried about the future of my daughter-in-law and granddaughter. After marrying her son, her daughter-in-law has already retired when her child is born. It might sound bad, but I got a plenty of money to spare due to the accident. However, I can't live on that alone. Even though it is mentally painful, she will have to go to work. Of course, she wouldn't be able to do it right after losing my son. So I was hoping that I could support her in the meantime. As for finances, I only live on a pension, so I can't say that I can help them fully. However, I can do simple things like taking care of grandchildren or helping with household chores. My son was worried about me after I had lost his husband and he built a house in our neighborhood. I'm not saying it's a quick walk, but it's a 10 or 20-minute drive. My daughter-in-law's parents lie far away, so I thought that I, who was nearby, would go to help. So I told my daughter-in-law my feelings and thought, I won't ask for your help. She is me and CRN's child, so I'm going to do it on my own. However, what came back from her was these unexpected words. My son's funeral was over and I was about to settle down after my personal arrangements. How I was trying to help my daughter-in-law. I told her that I wanted to help in any way I could, but she flatly denied my feelings. From now on, we will have to live together. I'm glad you're concerned, but it's not something I want you to do. When I asked my daughter-in-law why she refused to support, she replied like that. My honest impression of that direct statement was that she's still young. Of course she's right, but I think there's more to it than that. I can't help but think so. As a matter of fact, if you can get someone to help you, you should do it. However, her young child left by her husband and herself left behind. She is still too young to accept help without hesitation in such a situation. In addition, the relationship between me and my daughter-in-law has not been good, even when my son was still around. Maybe it's a generational difference, but she's a little too flashy for me. As well as her appearance, her remarks in general were usually conspicuous. More than that, there are many good things about her, but I'm not good at those parts. I know I'm old, and I know she has her own personality. However, I couldn't help but be worried, and although I had built a relationship with my daughter-in-law on the surface, I hadn't been able to get closer than that. With that background, it's no wonder she doesn't want my help. That's why I decided to respect her opinion. From now on, there will come a time when it will not be possible for one person to do it alone. I just tell her that I am always willing to accept her so that she can rely on me when the time comes. Of course, I was worried, but she seemed to be taking action such as looking for a job with her, so I decided to keep an eye on her. Then, less than a month after my son passed away, my daughter-in-law started working and began to move forward, albeit little by little. My granddaughter would be home from school in the evening, so it was a job that ended in the evening, but she seemed to have enough income to not interfere with her life. I was worried about that, so I called my granddaughter when she was at home to ask how she was doing, but her reply was always cheerful and lively. Mommy is always kind. You've been working hard, Grandma doesn't have to worry. Hearing her say so, and I was relieved that my daughter-in-law was doing well. My granddaughter has always been an active child, and whenever she comes to our house, she is always around. because it was coming from her. I believed her words without question. Of course, I regularly contact my daughter-in-law to help as much as possible and ask if she has any problems, but her answer is always the same. It's really okay. You've asked me so many times. You don't trust me that much. It's like this every time, and it's cold. However, I decided to think that my daughter-in-law was also doing her best in her own way, and now I am trying to keep this sense of distance. However, one late at night several months later, suddenly I thought about my son and I felt lonely, so I went outside to catch the night breeze. Without trying, my feet head to the neighborhood park where my son used to play when he was little. Since my son has grown up, I have been visiting less frequently, and I feel nostalgic as I was thinking about it. I saw a figure on the swing. Even from a distance, the shade is clearly small. I thought it was obviously a child, and I thought, why at this time of the day? Feeling uncomfortable, I approached to at least drive the kid home. Then, when I got close enough to judge the child's appearance clearly, I involuntarily let out a voice. What? Galilea? My granddaughter looked up as if she had been repelled by my voice, which got uttered with surprise. Noticing me, she wiped away the tears she had been shed and opened her mouth in a panic. Grandma, this is not what you think. I couldn't sleep, so I came out on my own. Mom doesn't know about this, my granddaughter said to me as looking away from me. It was different from the lively granddaughter I knew, and it looked like she was trying to hide something. I have a bad feeling from her behavior. Maybe that's why. I asked my upset granddaughter a slightly mean question. Oh yes, then I'll have to call your mom. As soon as I said that, her face turned pale. She said something blunt, seeming awkward, asked a question that she clearly didn't want. She's still in elementary school, so she can't manage to fake it well. I'm sorry, Grandma said something mean. Along with the guilt I felt when I saw my granddaughter like that, I apologized while stroking her head. She must have been crying a lot until I found her. She can't hide her crying eyes and smile. I felt sorry for her and almost cried. Gently pulling her hand, I tried to take her home, but she has refused. Well, Mommy is coming to pick me up. That's why I have to stay in the park until then. I don't think she realizes that what she said earlier, that her mother didn't know she was here, and that this statement contradicts. However, she seems to be preoccupied with keeping her promise to my daughter-in-law and does not seem to be paying attention to it. In the first place, there is no way that my granddaughter, who is still in elementary school, can think and speak that much. Why she is here. I don't think she even knows that she's telling me the exact answer. My granddaughter's sanity is so painful that I almost cry again. That's why I told her in a gentle tone to reassure her that she didn't have to worry about her mother. It's okay, I'll tell Mommy, so that she won't know you broke the promise. My granddaughter, who has always been fond of me, seems to have been relieved by my words. She patted her chest and took my hand. Good to hear that. Mommy is scary when she gets angry. And the uncle, who is Mommy's good friend, also gets angry. My granddaughter's casual words made me think so hard that the blood vessels in my head would break. When my granddaughter, who is still in elementary school, out at such a time, I thought it wouldn't be a good reason, but I didn't expect it would have anything to do with a man. Moreover, from the way my granddaughter speaks, I don't think my daughter-in-law cares about her very much. How long has this been going on? Just thinking about it makes me feel disgusted. I immediately took my granddaughter home and put her to bed. knowing that it was a nuisance late at night. I asked my neighbors to keep an eye on my granddaughter. I was fortunate that I had been close to my neighbors from before and that I explained the situation briefly, which helped. Thanks to that, I can go to my daughter-in-law's after this. Then I drove off without any worries and went to my daughter-in-law's. I didn't care if it's late. I rang the doorbell. At first, my daughter-in-law, who was ignoring me, eventually appeared from the front door in a languid manner after ringing several times. She looked surprised when she saw my face. My daughter-in-law, who has a clearly sensed trouble, immediately asks me about my granddaughter. I just found Galilea in a neighborhood park. Can you explain what's going on? I had a surprisingly cold voice. My daughter-in-law seems to be upset by my appearance and that my grandson's thing came out of my mouth. I don't think he thought I would notice. Normally, this is the time when I'm usually asleep, and today I just went to the park on a whim. Normally, I wouldn't have noticed. I don't know how long my granddaughter actually spent the night in that park, but she seemed to be used to it, even though she was crying. This is certainly not the first time. Hey, what the hell do you mean? Having Galilea? Where's she? My daughter-in-law comes to me as if she was in a hurry to exude anger. However, it is useless to do anything about it now. That's exactly what I want to say to you. What on earth did you have to let Galilea out such a late at night? If you have a reason that makes sense to me, say it now, forgetting that it was late at night. I raised my voice. My daughter-in-law seems too overwhelmed by me to speak anymore. Then a man came out from the back when he heard the commotion at the door. I wonder if this man is her boyfriend. It's only been a few months since my son passed away. I was surprised that she got a boyfriend in such a short period of time, or rather, she was having an affair. I hunched. He heard the whole situation from her and sighed troublesomely. It's already late. Can you leave? We'll adopt Galilea. We won't bother you. He said those things just like that. Is he trying to make me mad on purpose at this point? I couldn't help but think, who would give my cute granddaughter to someone who would do such a thing? I didn't like neither the man saying such insane things without hesitation, nor my daughter-in-law hiding behind hid. She hated my interference after my son's death because of this man. Probably on top of that, she was trying not to expose her treatment of my granddaughter. They both all rotten as people and as adults. You don't understand what you've done. There is no way I give my sweet granddaughter to you without hiding his indignation. When I say that, he sighs even more and opens his mouth. Okay, then we're okay with that. I'll pick her up tomorrow, so please take care of her at your place for today. That's good, right? He said so without losing his troublesome demeanor. My daughter-in-law behind him seemed to be feeling a little guilty, and she had an awkward expression on her face. I know what you mean. I don't have anything more to say. However, there was no way that I would be satisfied with this. When I replied so, he seemed relieved that it was finally over. As he tried to go back in the house, I spoke to him. Why are you acting like it's all good now? I just said there is no more story from me, but the story itself isn't over yet, is it? Is it still going on? He seemed clearly disgusted. He reluctantly turned to me. Is there anything else? I'm already sleepy. Come on, please. He said that, but he rolled his eyes at my next words. Don't worry, I'm sure you'll wake up soon from drowsiness. You won't be sleepy during the police interview, will you? I said this with the sound of sirens echoing in the distance, and as I expected, the man's drowsiness seemed to wake up. As soon as I finished talking, my daughter-in-law and him were taken away by the police. After that, through a police interview, it was found that they had been having an affair since my son was still alive. On top of that, she testified that she started taking my granddaughter out to the park shortly after her son passed away, and that she had taken her outside as they wanted to spend time alone without her. When I found out, I immediately decided to sue the two of them. It was about their infidelity and custody of my grandchildren. Even though my son has died, I, as a relative, still have the right to claim. Fortunately, I was able to win the case for alimony and custody, and the alimony paid by my daughter-in-law and her cheating partner will be saved for the future of my granddaughter. Originally, they were arrested after being taken away, so I was going to take my granddaughter anyway. However, I didn't want my daughter-in-law to claim custody of my granddaughter after she came out of jail, so I took steps in advance. Despite the circumstances, my granddaughter, who was suddenly separated from her mother, was not sad, but just cried as if she was relieved. Keep us alone. I wonder what kind of life she has had after my son died. It's so easy to imagine. If only I had noticed it sooner. I have no end of regrets, but I would like to watch over her on behalf of my son so that she does not have to go through anything unreasonable in the future.
This concludes this story. Thank you very much for listening. Please listen to the next story. Have fun.
Why are you feeding Mom's bones? This happened when my husband was giving the dog treats, Bones, to our pet. My niece suddenly pointed at the bone. My 5-year-old niece was always saying curious things. So I thought it was just another one of those times, but her face turning pale and starting to shake uncontrollably was not normal at all. No way, that couldn't possibly be true. As I began to investigate further, I was about to face some horrifying truths. My name is Emily. I got married to my husband, Ed, 3 years ago, and we were enjoying happy days together. If there was one worry, it was that we couldn't have children easily. But they say babies are a blessing, so there's no point in rushing. The slight loneliness I felt was filled by our dog, Chappie, who we got in return. Besides, we had something to look forward to regularly as a couple. Sorry again this time. Please take care of my daughter. That was the care of our 5-year-old niece, Olivia, brought by my brother's wife, Taylor. Taylor, who had finished her maternity leave a few years ago, only brought Olivia over on weekends when she had to work. Our niece was a very cute girl and had grown attached to us, and both my husband and I doted on her as if she were our own child. Olivia has a slightly mysterious power. It may sound strange to say this, but she was a child with exceptionally sharp intuition. She could predict snack menus and never lost at rock, paper, scissors against me. My husband seemed unfazed, but I jokingly called Olivia's ability prophecy. Now, why do we end up taking care of Olivia so often? Well, that's because of my brother, James. She works for a well-known company and earns quite a bit. But my brother, who married her, took advantage of her earnings and started frequenting pachinko parlors without a job. So when Taylor worked on weekends, my brother would be absent, leaving Olivia alone. Taking care of Olivia was not a problem. But if this lifestyle continues, it will be a considerable burden on her. I suggested consulting our parents several times, but she gently declined. I appreciate the sentiment, but it's our problem, so I don't want to worry others. Besides, except for being fond of pachinko, he helps with household chores properly. She said she wasn't considering divorce because they had children. However, during one of these discussions, I overheard my brother asking for money over the phone. Taylor, I'm on a roll at pachinko, but I'm a bit short on cash. Can you bring some over right now? I'll pay you back double, promise. His carefree words leaked through the phone, and I felt annoyed. He clearly didn't understand what my sister-in-law was going through. Taylor smiled tiredly, and at a distance, Olivia, who had been playing with my husband, started rummaging through the drawer and pulled out a cold medicine without being told, bringing it to Taylor. Mom, take this medicine. Thank you. But Mom is fine. so don't worry, okay? Mom is just a little tired. Olivia is so kind. Even a child could be considerate. But when it came to my brother, at that time, I didn't think much of it. However, the one who came to drop off Olivia the following weekend was my brother, James. It was usually Taylor who brought her, so I was a little surprised. How unusual. Sacrificing gambling for family duty. Don't say it in such a nasty way. Actually, I caught a cold and I want you to take care of Olivia for a few days. I have to go to the hospital and take care of myself, so I don't seem to have time to take care of her. Listening to that, I remembered when Olivia brought me cold medicine. Said, I'm worried. Should I go make dinner? No, please don't worry about it. She says she'll be fine if she rests a bit. Let's take this opportunity to make sure you treat Taylor well too, okay? Yeah, I have to go back and take care of her right away, so I'll leave now. My brother, eager to leave, probably because his ears were hurting. You'll just lose at gambling anyway. Then Olivia, seeing that, murmured quietly, You said you were going to take care of Mom, right? You're not going today. Even though my daughter spoke to him, my brother left without even looking at Olivia, hastily putting on his shoes and walking out. What's with that attitude, Zarashli? As I gently stroked the seemingly lonely Olivia, I scolded him in my mind. I planned to reprimand him firmly when he came next, but he showed up again later that day. And for what? Because he didn't have money and couldn't buy ingredients for dinner, he asked me to lend him some. No way. You didn't go to gambling again, did you? Taylor seemed much better at lunch, so I thought I'd take a light break. Anyway, can you lend me some money? She's waiting at home with an empty stomach. With that said, I couldn't exactly lecture him at length. Reluctantly, I handed him a $50 bill. Thanks! I'll pay you back double as thanks. You don't have to double it, just make sure you pay it back. Don't worry, I'll soon get a large sum of money. A large sum of money. Is he talking about gambling again? Before I could question him further, he had already dashed out of the entrance. For the next 3 days, I didn't hear from my brother and I continued to take care of Olivia. I thought it was fine since it seemed like just a cold, but I was starting to get worried. Just as I was thinking of going to take care of him on my own, my brother suddenly showed up without any notice, and he had shopping bags filled with a large amount of snacks in both hands. I was so busy with unfamiliar nursing that I couldn't even contact you. Sorry about that. She's still not better, so I can't let you see her yet, but Taylor seems to be getting much better. Seeing my brother laughing carelessly, I felt relieved that Taylor seemed to be okay. That's fine, but what about those snacks? These are a thank you for taking care of Olivia this time. Since I'll probably ask you for more favors soon, this is part of that. The bag he handed over had a lineup of snacks that looked like typical casino prizes. He probably went there again. However, seeing Olivia's eyes shining next to me, I decided not to question him, and I handed the heavy bag to my husband. Our husband, who loves sweets, was delighted. Also, I prepared something special. My brother plunged his hand into the bag of snacks and pulled something out. Ta-da-day! Dog bone-shaped gum. I bought it as a thank you because Chappie has been keeping Olivia company. Our dog noticed the sweets and happily ran around my husband's feet. This bone-shaped gum has a good reputation. Let's give it to Chappie right away. My husband said thank you and took out the gum from the bag. Chappie got very excited about the gum, which looked just like a real bone, and immediately started chewing on it. It really does have a good reputation. I didn't expect him to be this happy. While laughing at the excited Chappie, I suddenly looked at Olivia. For some reason, she was pale and trembling uncontrollably. What's wrong? Why are you letting him eat that? Although her voice was barely audible, I could clearly hear her this time. Why are you letting him to eat Mom's bones? Upon hearing that, everyone fell silent for a moment. It was a seemingly joking remark, but my niece's expression was deadly serious. My husband asked, "What's wrong, Olivia? Did you remember a scary TV show or something?" As he picked up my niece and tried to comfort her, but her trembling didn't stop. Watching her like that, I suddenly remembered my niece's mysterious power. Is this also a prophecy? But it's too eerie for that. Hey bro, Taylor is really starting to recover from the cold, right? What are you talking about now? Of course she is. Otherwise, she wouldn't be going out. Despite my brother's denial, his voice sounded different from usual. Sensing that he was hiding something, I pressed him. I'm still worried, so I'll go take care of her directly. I can make her something nutritious. No, there's no need for that. If you catch a cold too by doing that, who will take? My brother stubbornly insisted, wiping his cold sweat and sighing heavily. Despite how it looks, Olivia's important to me. I want to do my best to keep her from catching a cold. He spoke passionately, but he hadn't taken any basic cold precautions like wearing a mask. Would someone with such conviction neglect such elementary things? However, before I could say the next word, my brother quickly ended the conversation. It's about time I made dinner for Taylor, so I'm going home. As I watched him leave in a hurry, I shifted my gaze to Olivia, who my husband was holding, and she was still trembling slightly. Hey, Olivia, you mentioned Mom turning into bones earlier, right? What's that about? I'm not sure, but at that moment, it felt like Mom turned into bones. My niece said and burst into tears, shaking her head when asked anything else. I'll follow my brother. Take care of her, please. I said to my husband as I rushed out of the house, and it was just as my brother turned right. While keeping a certain distance to avoid being noticed, I followed behind him. But what could my brother be hiding? An affair or maybe a marital dispute? None of these seemed to connect to what Olivia said about Bones. As I pondered over this, my brother continued straight ahead instead of turning down the road he should have. There's no house over there. Where is he going? After about 5 minutes of walking, we arrived at a deserted park on the outskirts of town. It was a park where even the swings were rusted and unusable, and he was meeting a man there alone. Even from a distance, the man he was meeting was muscular. Although their conversation wasn't clear due to the distance, my brother seemed to be fawning over him. As I held my breath and listened in on their conversation, I caught a snippet of what they were saying, but the content was too shocking. No way! It can't be true! I almost screamed and covered my mouth with my hand. Then, I couldn't stand still and ran to my brother's house. When I arrived, I used the spare key that had been given to me before to enter. And the next moment, I felt a heavy, polluted atmosphere. And it was no wonder, as garbage was scattered around, an unpleasant odor filled the air, and it was clear that it was an unsanitary environment with no ventilation. It was a lie to take care of her after all. Where's Taylor? I called out her name at the entrance, but there was no sound from inside the house, so I reluctantly took off my shoes and went inside. Then, after peeking into the living room and kitchen, I opened the door to the bedroom in the back and was left speechless. There, lying on the futon, with both hands and feet bound with rope and a gag in her mouth, was Taylor. Taylor, are you okay? I hurried over to her and untied her restraints. Water, please. When I took a bottle from the refrigerator and handed it to my sister-in-law, she drank it all at once. How awful. Did my brother do this right? Even though he's my brother, I felt terrified. But for now, I need to call an ambulance for Taylor. I rushed out, forgetting my smartphone at home. As I stood up to use the landline, the next moment, my heart almost stopped. To my surprise, my brother, who had returned at some point, met my eyes. James, what on earth is going on? Explain yourself. I had no choice. If I didn't do this, my life would be in danger. Is it about debt? While searching for Taylor, I searched the rooms. Then I happened to see a large pile of collection letters thrown on the living room table. The reason we're broke is because of you. The person you were talking to in the park earlier, they're debt collectors, right? You were snooping around there. You need to make sure to check behind you as well. My brother laughed without a hint of remorse. It seems he was taken in by a local scammer, got involved in a shady investment scheme, and ended up with a large amount of debt from dubious financial transactions. However, in the end, it turned out to be a scam, and he was left with nothing. And in trouble with repayment, my brother started thinking of nefarious things. The conversation I overheard a few hours ago during my surveillance at the park revealed that he and the debt collectors planned to make Taylor disappear and collect insurance money. But I didn't want to believe it, I didn't want to think my brother could be such a terrifying person. It's tough for me too. The kids are noisy and Taylor keeps saying I should work. I was aiming for a big turnaround, but even the people I trusted betrayed me. That's just karma. Why couldn't you just work hard and support your family? Imp beef, that kind of boring life doesn't suit me. My life is for myself, so I can do whatever I want. I couldn't help but feel disgusted by his selfishness. I didn't want to believe that such a man was my brother. I'm going to report this to the police. You need to pay for your sins and reflect on your actions. How are you going to report it? Saying that my brother flashed the knife he had hidden behind his back. You will be coming to take care of Taylor today and stay over. I'll let it know. If it comes to this, I'll have to lock you up in this room too. Saying so, my brother approached the landline phone behind him and ripped out the cord. Bro, stop this nonsense. If I don't go home anytime soon, Ed will find it suspicious. It seemed he hadn't even considered that possibility. I was about to say something, but the next moment, he looked at me with a defiant smile. Hey, Emily, want to team up with me? Huh? I was speechless at the unexpected words that came out of my brother's mouth. However, he paid no attention to my reaction. I've actually been thinking about the perfect crime. With a smug expression, he gleefully revealed something unexpected. But I had a bad feeling about it. Ever since I was a child, when my brother makes that kind of face, it's all about being a bastard. However, it is unwise to provoke him at this point. So, how do you do this whole perfect crime thing? It's Chappie. My brother, after a lot of pretense, said something unexpected, as if he was about to tell me a very special secret. The perfect crime involving Chappie. You saw it earlier, right? That dog was happily chewing on bones. What my brother described as the perfect crime was truly outrageous. He planned to dismember Taylor when she became a missing person as planned and dispose of her. And then he thought of feeding those bones to our Chappie for disposal. I was so shocked that I couldn't close my mouth. I can't believe it. Were you really thinking of doing that? Oh, don't you think it's a brilliant idea? If it works out, I'll share the insurance money with you too. Emily, you want your own home, right? However, just as I was about to say the next words, my brother's face suddenly tensed up. At that moment, the intercom in our house rang. Hey, don't move and wait. If you do anything unnecessary, there will be consequences. With a glare at me and Taylor, my brother headed for the front door. And the moment the key turned in the lock, the front door was forcefully kicked open. Police, drop your weapons and surrender. What? Why? In the blink of an eye, I couldn't comprehend it either. Why the police showed up just in time to apprehend my brother. Did you make the call? I didn't. Wasn't it you? I shook my head. As we stood there dumbfounded, one of the police officers rushed over to us. Are you okay? An ambulance will be here soon. Why did you come to help us? No one made a call. We received a call from a little girl. She said, please help my mommy. She was about 5 years old. Oh, that must have been Olivia. She warned us of the danger. Relieved, Taylor and I watched as my brother, restrained by the police, struggled and thrashed about. Darn it, that Olivia, if it weren't for her meddling, my plan would have been perfect. Grimacing with regret, he pounded the floor with his fist. How is that perfect? Spied me. Taylor couldn't help but shout out in disbelief. Listen, what's with the dismemberment plan? You can't show the doctor a dismembered body. You won't get a death certificate, and then you won't be able to claim the insurance money, right? And besides, why bother weakening and faking illness? Wouldn't it be simpler to just do it all at once? Feeding bones to a dog to make them disappear. Chappie is a small dog. How many years do you think it'll take for him to finish eating the bones of a grown adult? And Chappie is a rescue dog we got at the adoption event almost 10 years ago. There's no way he can eat something so hard. With each merciless criticism from me and Taylor, my brother had no room for rebuttal and tears welled up in his eyes. But our anger wasn't going to be quelled by this. You, loafing around every day without working, has your brain turned to mush. Yeah, seriously, if you have time to think about some perfect crime or whatever, you should study some basic common sense. And then finally, he burst into tears and started crying out loud. Darn it, everyone's making fun of me. Well, it's your own fault, isn't it? Yeah, I'd die, our own brother. What a disgrace. At least reflect on your actions properly behind bars. Well, we're all cutting ties with you, so we don't care what happens to you anymore. What? Are you all abandoning me? Don't say such cold-hearted things. Well, that's a bit too generous of you. You've been slacking off all this time, so now you'll have to pay the price alone. Now, officer, please take this man away. After that, my brother continued to wail and complain, but he was handcuffed and taken away in a police car. Taylor soon headed to the hospital in the ambulance that arrived, and eventually, with my husband, I reunited with Olivia Chan, who had rushed over. Thank you for today, Olivia. Both Mommy and I are safe. As my niece happily nodded at my words, my husband and I smiled at each other, resolved to continue supporting Taylor and Olivia closely. Later on, my brother was sentenced to prison. Taylor divorced him and demanded $5,000 in compensation and $100,000 in child support. Since my parents and I cut ties with my brother, his future life, filled with debt, will be tough even after he's released. My husband, Chappie, and I continue to live happily, occasionally taking care of my niece. Olivia, are you lonely when Mommy's at work? Not at all, because soon I'll be a big sister. And a month later, with the discovery of a new life through prenatal checkups, I finally understood the meaning of my niece's words.
This concludes this story. Thank you very much for listening. Please listen to the next story. Have fun.
Run away from my son. Shortly after dinner, my mother-in-law, Mary, who was rushed to the hospital frothing at the mouth, briefly opened her eyes in her hospital bed. What do you mean? Soon after, Mary passed away, leaving me in a state of sorrow and confusion. She must have been in a daze because she was nearly passes away. My husband, who had lost his real mother, seemed pale yet somehow restless. At that moment, I couldn't have imagined such a cruel ending. I'm Hannah, 33 years old. I got married 5 years ago, but we don't have children. I was shocked when my parents suddenly died in an accident when I was in college. However, I'm still grateful that as an only child, my parents left me enough inheritance to live comfortably. After getting married, I ended up living with my husband and my mill in the house I inherited from my dad. My mother-in-law, Mary, was a sociable person who started talking to me a lot from the first time we met. Thanks to our shared interest in watching movies, we became very close. Roman holidays are wonderful, isn't it? My favorite part is the mouth of truth scene. It makes me so nervous watching it. Roman Holiday is an old movie, but it's still often used in TV commercials. This movie was particularly our favorite. The Mouth of Truth, mentioned in the movie, refers to a tourist spot in Italy with a legend that liars who put their hand in the mouth will have it bitten off. Like this, Mary and I always enjoyed talking about our favorite films and going to see them together. And my husband, Ted, was so handsome that my friends were very envious when I announced our marriage. Despite living a seemingly smooth life, I began to struggle with a worsening chronic condition that made it hard for me to keep up with household chores. Since I quit my job, my husband's attitude began to change. He would come home late from overtime work, but often come home with lipstick stains on his suit, which worried me. Aren't you stop hanging out at bars with girls? Drinking isn't cheap. You should cut back a bit. Hannah, you're also costing us a lot with all the meds you're taking. It's the same thing. It's not the same. I'm sick. Coming home to a gloomy wife makes me want to enjoy some time outside. Anyway, you have plenty of money, so why not increase my allowance? My husband angrily sat at the dining table and banged his fist on it. However, I didn't want to use the money I inherited from my parents on everyday expenses, let alone my husband's drinking money. This caused frequent arguments, and our relationship rapidly deteriorated. Honestly, there were times I felt uncertain about continuing our journey together, but in those times, Mary would always mediate between us. Both of you, don't get so mad. Like in the movies, make up after a fight. This is our problem, Mom. Stay out of it. Well, if you're going to say that, then it's your fault for wasting money and cheating. Reflect a little. In the end, Mary always managed to silence my husband and took my side. She also listened to my worries about my illness, making her like a real mother to me. One day, my husband came home in an unusually good mood. We have our anniversary next week, right? I'm going to cook your favorite dish as a surprise for our anniversary. Look forward to it. He circled the date on the calendar with a red pen. Lately, with him going out more, I felt neglected and thought he didn't care about me anymore. So this surprise moved me to tears. On the day of our anniversary, Ted said, "You guys relax in the living room," and he locked himself in the kitchen since morning. Then, around 2 p.m., Ted finally brought out a beautifully plated pasta. Sorry for the delay. I had a tough time cutting the ingredients. I made pasta today because I know Hannah loves Italian cuisine. I'm starving. Actually, ever since watching Roman Holiday, I've fallen in love with Italian food too. We quickly devoured the delicious pasta, saying delicious as we savored each. Is there dessert coming up next? I'm full from the pasta. Let me rest a bit. Mary said she'd be back in an hour, happily rubbing her belly as she returned to her room. I'm tired from doing something I'm not used to, so I'm going to take a nap too. Ted then sprawled out on the living room sofa. Happy hours, I'm so happy to be spending such a peaceful anniversary. For me, who had been fighting with my husband recently, today was a moment of bliss. However, even after the agreed time passed, my usually punctual Mill didn't come to the living room. Should I go wake up her? Just let her sleep. More importantly, Hannah, are you feeling all right? It's me, I'm fine, but why do you ask? At that moment, I didn't understand why Ted asked me that. I just wanted to make sure my cooking didn't make you sick. Thanks for worrying about me. His concern made me naturally smile. But after waiting for a while and still no sign of my Mill waking up, I went to her room and knocked, but got no response from inside. Slowly opening the door, I found my Mill collapsed on the floor, frothing at the mouth. Instead, call an ambulance quickly. Something's wrong with Mary. She was immediately rushed to the hospital for emergency treatment. However, there was nothing more they could do, and Ted and I were brought to her side for her final moments. Mary, tears overflowed as I stood in front of my unconscious her. Was Ted deep in thought? He stood silently. Suddenly, she regained consciousness and squeezed my hand. Run away from my son. With a weak voice, she desperately tried to tell me something. What do you mean? Then she fell back into a coma, leaving me confused and alarmed. What did she want to say? Looking at Ted, I could clearly see his face turn pale. Maybe Mom was delirious and started saying strange things. I'm going to the CVS. Now, at a time like this, the next moment, he left, despite the fact his mother might stop breathing at any moment. But at that time, I couldn't stop my tears, holding her hand. Eventually, our hope was in vain, and soon after, my Mill quietly passed away. Later, The doctor explained that it was highly likely she had ingested a large amount of medication on her own, and it was the same prescription medication that's hard to come by over the counter, suggesting she might have used mine. But even with that explanation, I couldn't accept it. We had plans to go to the movies next week. I can't believe it. This must be someone else's doing. Can we look into it again for any suspicious details? Maybe she was just overthinking things. But if already, and with that, Ted wouldn't let me talk to the hospital staff. As I was organizing my Mills belongings after the funeral one day, my friend Jessica invited me out for a meal. Feeling a bit better. If there's anything troubling you, feel free to talk to me about anything. Taking a leap, I confided in her that I couldn't accept the idea that Mary had taken her own life. And I was feeling uneasy because my husband kept saying I was overthinking it. Ted is such a great husband. Maybe he's just pretending to be indifferent to help you recover faster. Do you think so? I hope that's the case. Anyway, it's a small consolation that the last meal she had was her favorite Italian cuisine. Comfortingly, Jessica gently patted my shoulder. But I still felt something was off. I get the feeling Ted is hiding something from me. Sure, I understand Ted can't be in his right mind since his real mother passed away. But still, the way Ted suddenly left the hospital room during our last moments with Mary, and how he forcefully stopped me from talking to the doctor on that day, was strange. And no matter how much I think about it, I can't believe she would take my medication. After parting with my friend, I went over everything that had happened, one by one. Could it be that there was another meaning to all this? As I sorted through my thoughts, I realized a cruel truth was hidden beneath me, but without evidence, I can't just go to the police. What should I do? After much deliberation, I decided to devise a plan to uncover the truth. A few days later, I want to cheer Hannah up. So I'll cook for us this weekend, Ted said, seemingly concerned about me, but I had been waiting for this moment. I'd like to invite my friend Jessica and also my uncle, if that's okay. Jessica is one thing, but the uncle too. Ted made a puzzled face, hesitating to invite my uncle who lives far away, saying it would be awkward since they barely know each other. My uncle is currently in town for work. I owe him a lot since my parents passed away, and I want to thank him. Besides, it'll be more fun with more people, and it'll cheer me up too. This meal was supposed to uplift me. Reluctantly, Ted agreed to invite my uncle as well. On the day of the meal, Jessica and my uncle were invited, and Ted served his homemade pizza. Then, during coffee, after the meal, Ted suddenly stared intently at my face. "Everything okay, Hannah?" "Huh, I feel fine, but why do you ask?" "Remember, you asked the same thing after our anniversary meal. Are you really that concerned about my health?" Hannah has a chronic condition, so I just check on her health now and then. Ted smiled at me, and Jessica joked, "You have such a caring husband. I'm jealous." It was a warm moment, but I coldly stated, "I thought you were wondering why I hadn't passed away yet, despite you tampering with my medication." Ted seemed startled, spitting out his coffee. "Don't be silly. There's no way I would do such a thing. Hannah, you shouldn't tease your husband, who's gone to the trouble of cooking a lovely meal for you." Both of them started getting angry, but I had something important to convey. It's too unnatural for Mary to choose to end her own life. She was collateral damage that day. Are you still going on about that? It's clear to me that Ted had been putting a large amount of medication in the food to get rid of me. After Mary passed away, I noticed that the medication, which I receive in bulk from the doctor, had diminished from its case. Furthermore, on the day she was rushed to the hospital, she had said, "My pasta is plated more beautifully," and swapped plates with me. If we hadn't switched plates, I would have been the one heading to the afterlife. So it was me, not her, who was the target. Thinking that she had become my substitute makes my heart wrench. Why should I be suspected? I absolutely didn't do it. So believe me. Then, can you put your hand in the mouth of truth? Huh? What's that? It's from Roman Holiday, a movie your mother loved. Liars will lose their hand, you know. I didn't miss the way Ted's eyes darted around nervously. Let me put it this way. If you were trying to finish off Hannah with the same method this time, why are you still alive after eating all the food? Explain that. David stood up abruptly, a frown creasing his forehead. Because I secretly switched our plates earlier, the symptoms from the medication should be starting soon, shouldn't? Is that true? Oh my God. A panic, as if wanting to vomit out everything. Ted suddenly grabbed a trash can and shoved his fingers down his throat. That's when Jessica screamed out loud, "Honey, don't leave me behind and go to the afterlife." She clung to Ted and wailed as if facing the crisis of a loved one. And I watched in silence for a while before telling them. The plate switch was a complete lie. A lie? Thank goodness. But then, why is Hannah unharmed? I anticipated you might steal my medication to mix into the food, so I swapped my medication with vitamin pills. So, it turns out what I've been saying is correct. In fact, after the funeral, I realized from the words of Mary and Ted's actions that he had been planning to get rid of me. But I had no concrete proof. However, Ted's panic when he thought he had eaten the food prepared for me confirms he did the same thing this time. And I know about you and Jessica having an affair. Confess. How did you know about that? When I met you the other day, you casually mentioned that the last meal Mary had was her favorite Italian cuisine. I hadn't told you about that day's meal. I've been too heartbroken to talk about the circumstances of her collapse with anyone. So, the only other person who knew about that day's meal was Ted, meaning Jessica must have heard it from him, indicating they were secretly connected. Also, the way you called Ted by honey and clung to him just now, it clearly shows there's more to your relationship. Jessica trembled and bit her lower lip. The main reason you wanted to get rid of me was for the money, wasn't it? As I pressed them, Ted sat back on the sofa, looking up at me defiantly. Yeah, you got me. I wanted to leave you for Jessica, but I figured why not take all of your inheritance before divorcing? He smirked, saying he planned to claim he was struggling with illness and had overdosed on the medication himself if the police ever got involved. Moreover, Jessica inviting me out after the funeral was to check if I was getting close to the truth. As a result, since I was suspecting Ted, he decided it was time to quickly get rid of me. You were wealthy because of your parents' inheritance. I married you thinking I could live a lavish life, but you turned out to be so stingy it was a letdown. So, you never loved me from the start, like I could ever fall for plain and unattractive Hannah. In contrast, Jessica is glamorous and totally my type. Jessica seemed pleased with Ted's words. She laughed mockingly, saying, I couldn't stand seeing you, a lame girl, marry such a handsome guy. Now you deserve it? I glared at them with frustration and anger. All because of this, Mary was dragged into this and died. Mom was always on Hannah's side and a nuisance. Honestly, it's refreshing she's gone and without solid evidence, I won't get caught. Sid and Jessica, unashamed, sat close, almost ready to kiss. That's when my uncle, who had been quietly sitting at the table, suddenly stood up and approached them. Sid and Jessica, having forgotten about my uncle's presence, stared at him in confusion for a moment. I'm actually working in these kind of field. When my uncle pulled something from his inner pocket, Ted and Jessica's eyes widened so much they looked as if they might pop out, and they froze for a while. Didn't I mention my uncle is a police officer? They gaped like fish, and I struggled to hold back laughter. Of course, my uncle being in this town for work was a lie. I had asked him to come just in case. "You're under arrest, guys." I was in a panic. The two pleaded with my uncle for leniency, but a serving police officer would never entertain such a request. "Hannah, please convince your uncle for us. You two targeted my life. How could I possibly grant such a request? Be prepared. I'm going to sue for damages and file for divorce. But if I get arrested, I won't be able to keep my job, and if you take all my money, how am I supposed to live?" Ted's eyes were red, looking like he was about to burst into tears.
Jessica turned pale, her makeup smeared by sweat.
Suddenly, they knelt before me.
"From now on, we'll do whatever you ask, Hannah. Please forgive us." "Sorry. Please forgive us."
Her cries, mixed with sobs, did not change my resolve. Having lost my parents early, Mary was like a real mother to me. Thinking of her kindness made my heart feel like it was tearing apart. Reflect on your actions behind bars. But remember this, no matter how much you atone, I will never forgive you in this lifetime. Sid and Jessica broke down crying then and there. And afterward, my uncle took them to the police station. Thus, my husband and his accomplice were arrested. Given the death of Mary, my ex-husband likely won't escape prison time. Jessica, too, was found to have been complicit in the crime and would face some form of punishment. Through a lawyer, a divorce with Ted was finalized, and I demanded $50,000 in damages from him and $30,000 from Jessica. She had to dip into her savings to pay, and with Ted losing his job, their prospects outside are dim. Later, my chronic condition improved to the point where I no longer needed medication, allowing me to return to work. Now going to see movies after work is my greatest joy, and I'm planning to see the revival screening of Roman Holiday next week.
This concludes this story. Thank you very much for listening. Please listen to the next story. Have fun.
Arrest your daughter who was left in the car. She's passed. Suddenly, I was told so by a police officer who came to my workplace. Getting upset, I rushed to contact my mother, who was supposed to be looking after my child. "I'm with her. She's having a snack right now." I was relieved for the time being, but it lasted only for a short time. The intense look of the police officer was on me. However, this suspicion on me made me realize the fact that had been hidden. I'm Kinaya Mullins, 38 years old. I live with my husband and my child. My husband, who is 4 years older than me, is a sales manager at the house manufacturer company. Due to the nature of his work, he often works on weekdays and holidays, so I can't say that he is very supportive of child rearing and housework. He tends to get upset if I ask him to pick up our child on his days off from work. In the past, when I worked at a drugstore on Sunday, I asked him, who was on his day off, to take care of our child. Let me relax on my day off. Unlike you, who is just a part-timer, I work in a place that is like a battlefield every day. Lucien is good at playing alone, and it doesn't take much work. Look, whatever. Come home as soon as you're done with work. I was worried about my husband's attitude that seemed to be too unbothered, and I was worried about whether he was taking care of him properly, so I couldn't focus on work that day. After that, I left my child with my mother, who lived nearby. There was no way I could win the argument because I was not good at complaining, and I didn't make things awkward. He's tired. I have to understand. With that in mind, I have been struggling to raise a child and do housework while working part-time. One day, an incident happened. I remember it was very cold that day. Early in the morning, I received a phone call from the manager of the store where I worked, in a desperate voice. "Can you come to work in place of a staff member who is not feeling well?" Staff members take turns on duty for each other. I replied, "I'm going to be a little late because I have to leave my son to my mom, but it's okay," and hung up. When I contacted my mother, she happily agreed and I started preparing in a hurry. "Shall I take him to your mother-in-law?" My husband, Geoffrey, said something unusually supportive. "What? Really? Is it good? Are you okay with your job?" I couldn't believe that it was a statement by my husband, who always sees it as someone else's problem, and I was surprised. "It's okay. I'll be there just in time." While saying this, I was watching my husband in a good mood as he picked up our son with joy. "Thank you, but he needs a car seat." "Then why don't I use your car today?" "I'll take you to the train station too. You can't drive my car, can you?" "His car is so big that I'm too scared to drive." "Really? It helps." After that, I went to work safely, and the store manager thanked me greatly. Regular customers said, "Thank you for everything," and I felt happy. However, just before 4 p.m., when I was about to finish my shift, I was called to the backyard by the in-store broadcast. There were 2 men. The store manager whispered in my ear, "It's the police," and I was introduced with a puzzled look. "This is Kania Mullins." "Police? Yes, I am Mullins, but..." With a confused mind, I tried hard to find the right idea, but I couldn't think of anything that would bother to visit a policeman in a casual outfit. For some reason, the police officer looked at me from head to toe as if he were observing me. "Please calm down and listen. Your daughter has passed away." "Yes, daughter. Well, that is, whose daughter?" I was even more confused, so they began to explain the situation in a nonchalant manner. They explained that in my car parked in the parking lot behind the station, a girl of about 1-year-old had died of the cold. Then, the driver of the car parked next to my car noticed something unusual and called an ambulance, but when they arrived, it was too late. It wasn't until I heard that I understood that I was suspected of being the one who created the situation. "Hold on a second. I don't know what you're talking about, and I only have a son. Besides, my mother is with him today." Yes, I'll hear about it at the police station anyway." The policeman patted me lightly when I explained it to him, and did not let me say any more. Apparently, they assumed I left my child in the car while working. I was treated as if I was a criminal, and it was only after I was put in a police car that I got permission to contact my mother. "You're funny. Of course I am with him." My mother, who does not know the situation, seems to be stunned by my call. I was relieved to hear the voices of mother and son, even though I knew that my son was safe. But it doesn't change the fact that the girl was dead in my car. When I arrived at the police station, I was asked the same question over and over again by a detective with intense gaze. So I told them that my husband had put our child in my car and taken him to my mother's place that morning. As a result, my suspicions seemed to be cleared for the time being, but my husband never answered the phone. While the police were trying to get in touch with him, I was asked, "I would like to ask you to confirm if you know the missing girl." To be honest, this was the hardest moment for me than when I suspected for what happened. I looked at the girl who seemed to be asleep and cried, feeling sorry for her. Unfortunately, I only had the impression that I might have seen her somewhere, but that was it. When I told the police officer honestly about it, he said, "If you remember anything, contact me," and I was finally released. It was dark outside, and I hurried to my mother's house, where my son was waiting. When I explained the situation to my mother, while my child was asleep, she comforted me by crying. And when I returned home, it was past 9 p.m., and my son fell asleep again. In the meantime, I called my husband many times, but he never picked up or called me back. Then, at midnight of that day, I finally received a message from him saying that he suddenly had to leave for a business trip. I immediately called him, but the call just kept ringing, so I replied with a message saying that there had been something cray happening over here. However, after that, I couldn't contact him again. I finally got up next day without a single sleep, but there was one more thing that bothered me besides my husband. That girl. I feel like I've seen her somewhere. Anyway, I can't know anything without asking my husband about the situation. I waited for his work hour to start and took up a courage to call. I was going to ask his workplace to contact my husband, who was on a business trip. It turned out that my husband had taken a vacation from the day before. I'm sorry, thank you very much. I think I was in a state where I couldn't think about anything for a while after I hung up the phone. In the midst of my shock, I finally came up with the idea of talking to my best friend, Chrissy. And the moment I opened my phone to make a call, I was stunned. In a hurry, I checked the previous messages sent by Chrissy. Lies, it's a lie. One of the images there shocked me so much that I couldn't help but gasp, because the girl who was in the picture with Chrissy was the girl who was left in my car. Oh my God, it was Chrissy's daughter who passed. Then the dots from yesterday's inexplicable events started to connect all at once. Why was Chrissy's child stranded in my car? I was convinced that it was not a delusion, but that my husband and my best friend were having an affair. Then, 2 years ago, when Chrissy, who was single after a divorce, got pregnant. I won't tell you who the dad is. I'm just a single mother, she said, laughing meaningfully. Maybe that girl was my husband's. I couldn't be sure, but I can't afford to leave it lightly. I felt unbearably angry that I had been deceived by my husband and my best friend for so many years. For the sake of the girl who was gone, I was determined to reveal the truth. I've always been bad at assertiveness, so I've been able to get by without arguing with my husband. But when I learned of this betrayal, I woke up. After all, a young child was tormented by 2 stupid adults. I was quick to take action to settle the matter. After dropping my daughter off at the nursery, I headed to Chrissy's house. When I arrived at her apartment and rang the doorbell, Chrissy opened the door in a sleepy manner. It's been a while. Did I wake you up? Kanaya, what's going on? Chrissy, without makeup, tried to close the door right away, but I put my bag between the doors as I'd seen it coming. There's Jeffrey too, right? Let's talk, 3 of us. I think I was laughing because Chrissy's panic was funny. Perhaps Chrissy was scared because the smile looked creepy. All right, you should have told me you're coming. Chrissy twitches her cheeks in grumbling, but beckons me in. I went to the back room and heard my husband call out to wake up. What, Kinia? After all, my husband was also there, and he was still asleep. However, that was the only time he was surprised, and by the time he came to the living room, he was ready to confront me. Shoot, you've already found out. As soon as he saw my face, he said in a playful tune. Chrissy, who had been upset just now, was also grinning behind my husband. Can you not make fun of me? I have something I want to ask. Oh, I'm scared. I had the urge to yell at Chrissy, who was acting silly, and I tried my best to suppress it. I guess you gotta call her daughter, didn't you? If you know that, why are you 2 here? Don't you go pick her up? They seemed to have expected that I would be contacted about Chrissy's daughter. I wonder how much these people know. Even so, I couldn't understand what they were doing. Well, give me a break. That kid, the police is taking care of her, right? This moment, I learned that she didn't know that her child was gone, and dismayed by how overly optimistic she was. And at the same time, I decided to tell the truth after I had heard their story. But how did this happen? Nas, we were surprised too, because when we got back to the parking lot, there were a lot of people around the... Oh yes, some people are just so dramatic. Then, the 2 of them began to talk about the previous day. My husband, who was on vacation, was planning to spend time with Chrissy from the beginning. But Chrissy's child got in the way of entering the hotel in front of the station. That's why he parked my car in a parking lot and went to the hotel with her child in the car. Learning it was a whimsical action, and I couldn't, my jaw dropping. And when I got out of the hotel and went back to the parking lot, the police were surrounding my car. He had even come to the ambulance, so he thought it was bad and ran away. In such a situation, I would normally be worried about the child, but the two of them interpreted it in their own favor. I am dismayed to hear that she's relieved to be free from taking care of her kid as she is under the protection of the police. How long has your relationship been going? I asked the two of them straight up to talk about how they got there. You're insensitive too. It's Kinaya, you know. Right after I got divorced, it's been 4 years. I've been giving some advice on her divorce, and things happened, but it's a common pattern, I guess. In fact, at that time, I suspected that my husband was having an affair. I was pregnant and nervous, so I thought it was probably me, overthinking. I was surprised that the other party was my best friend. So you're the father of Chrissy's child? That's right, unlike my son. My daughter is cute. While looking into my face, my husband readily admitted as if he was trying to make me angry. He said he had the idea of using my car on the spur of the moment. Chrissy doesn't have a car, so she thought that if they use my car with a child car seat, the three of them could easily go out. Then you should have divorced me and married Chrissy. I felt like I had wasted our time together and blamed my husband. However, once again, my husband made an impossible statement. If you do that, my company will find out that I had an affair and had a child, right? It's going to get in the way of my promotion. Sacrificing us for such a thing. I despised my husband to the core. Kenya, that's not all. Even Chrissy, who was next to my husband, laughed and spoke condescendingly. Jeffrey told me that his wife is a housekeeper who can't even talk back, so she can continue to do whatever she wants. Okay, but were you okay with that? You even have kids. I simply wondered, and Chrissy laughed out loud. Ha ha ha, I am sick of marriage. I just want to get paid for my living expenses. Oh yes, unlike Kittia, Chrissy costs me a lot. She's high maintenance, ha ha ha. My husband and Chrissy, who speak openly, must think of me as heir or something. Facing two selfish people, and my patience was about to reach its limit. Anyway, what are we going to do now? You can't get away with it, you know. I subtly led the conversation. Is it that much of a trouble? Chrissy, go pick her up then? Well, I got caught, and so I have to pick her up, but the police will be mad at me. Yeah, she's not old enough to come home alone. So far, they don't seem to care about her child even once, and when they open their mouths, they only worry about themselves. Enough is enough. There's no room for sympathy. Finally, I decided to tell the truth here. I'm dumbfounded. You both think only of yourself. Oh, what do you want to say? My husband looked at me unamusedly, but I didn't flinch at all. I'll tell you the truth. Your daughter passed away yesterday. She was left in the car in the middle of winter. The two of them had their eyes wide open and were screaming. Poor thing. I can't imagine how cold it was. Oh, you're lying. Your shallow actions have cost the life of a young child. Then Chrissy pointed at me and started yelling. It's all your fault, Kinaya. Chrissy, you can't be mad at me. Why don't you reflect on yourself a little? Shut up. It's your fault that you married Jeffrey. I don't understand what Chrissy is saying when she introduced him to me. I wondered if Chrissy was delirious because of the shock of losing her child. When I'm having a hard time with my divorce issues, you can't get married to show it off to me. You are not supposed to do it. It's your fault. What are you talking about? You got divorced because of your own infidelity. It's your fault. No, it wasn't supposed to be like this. Chrissy, who started crying, was still complaining about herself, saying, I should have been happier. On the other hand, my husband tries hard to make excuses in front of her, sobbing. Oh, it's none of my business. I was just going to have an affair from the beginning. It's too late. Chrissy's child doesn't really know I'm the father, does she? Kenya, we're not divorced yet, are we? Saying that, he comes up to me. I shook his hand away and said in the lowest voice possible, Coward, don't show up in front of me again. I then snuck in to the police and left the place, ignoring the two who had started an ugly argument. 2 days later, a phone call from the police informed them that the video from the surveillance camera of the parking lot was the deciding factor and that the two had been arrested. Both of them will now be brought to justice properly. What awaits them is a long and arduous thorny road, but it is all due to their actions. Meanwhile, I started to live a peaceful life with my mother and son. Then, at the behest of the drugstore manager, I ended up working as a full-time employee. I'm excited about the unexpected restart of my life.
This concludes this story. Thank you very much for listening. Please listen to the next story. Have fun.
A wife shouldn't use my toilet. A bad wife like you isn't a family member, and yet you're a woman who come into the house with a face that looks like a matter of course. I don't know if there's a single word to thank you for letting other people live here. Thank you, you shared. Hey, I can't hear you. More than that, how long are you going to sit there? It's horrible that you're touching the house. You dirty. You're so dirty, and the air is also bad because of you. From now on, use the toilet and bath outside. That's enough for you. At this time, none of the public baths are open. What are you talking about? There's a park right there, isn't there? There's a toilet and a faucet over there, right? Otherwise, I wouldn't let you in my house. Saying that, my mother-in-law locked me out of the front door. The story goes back a little bit. After marrying my husband, Fletcher, we lived with my parents-in-law because we both worked. Even before marriage, I occasionally appeared at my parents-in-law's house, and each time, my father-in-law treated me kindly and petted me like a real daughter. I lost my father when I was young, and I thought of my father-in-law as my real father. However, just before the marriage, my father-in-law fell ill and was hospitalized by the time we started living together. My mother-in-law, on the other hand, hits me coldly in contrast to my father-in-law. She was smiling and calm in front of my father-in-law, and she didn't do anything to me. When my father-in-law was gone, she said, "The food is too heavily seasoned. Do you want to make me sick?" "When you get close, the air gets worse," she said, which is close to abusiveness. She was a full-time housewife and was always at home, so the time to be alone with my mother-in-law was the hardest time. I don't want to go home, so I end up working more than usual. I continue to work overtime every day, and her sarcasm becomes more and more. Before I knew it, she was whispering to me every time she saw my face, and she was sighing intently. One day, when I came home from work, I frowned on my mother-in-law as usual. "Don't walk around the house with such a dirty body," which I was told. I was hungry, so I wanted to eat dinner first, but I had no choice but to go to the dressing room to take a bath. However, my mother-in-law, who was standing in front of the dressing room, looked at me and raised her eyebrows in disgust. "I don't think you're going to use my bath." "What? But you told me to clean it off." "Come clean up outside. How dare you use my bath?" "It's outside. Nothing is open near here at this time. If you go farther, you'll find somewhere open, so check it out for yourself. You know, I'm a clean freak. I can't stand other people being at home in the first place, but it makes me feel bad to be in the same house because it's unhygienic. That's too much. What do you tell me to do? If you stay at home, I'm going to get dirty. You are not my family, so take a bath and use the toilet outside." "How do I get to the bathroom?" "It's noisy. There's no toilet in the park." "There will be water in the park and in the baths, so don't be lazy and get out of here." Saying that, she pushes my back. I was kicked out of the house and the front door closed, and I stared at the door in a daze. It was common for me to be told abusive remarks, but this was the first time I had ever seen something like this. As expected, I thought that I would be allowed to use the bath tomorrow, so I finished that day at an internet cafe a few stops away. But this idea of mine was too naive. Even after many days, I was not allowed to use the bath or toilet. I went to the public bath from my salary, and I used the toilet at a nearby park every day. However, my mother-in-law was not satisfied with that, and his rant did not end there. At the end of the day, she said, "Since I let you live in my house, it would make sense to give the money you earn to me." Rent, she said, "and you are a very lowly person to sleep in for free." I wanted my mother, who lives alone in the countryside, to supplement her life as much as possible, so I earned money to send money, but I couldn't refuse her enthusiasm and decided to give my salary. Fletcher also watched how I was treated, but he always put my mother first. No matter how cold I go out to use the restroom, he pretend not to see it. On the contrary, my mother-in-law and my husband sometimes laughed at me. Even after more than half a year of living together, the treatment does not improve, but rather gets worse day by day. Why do I have to be treated like this? I thought so many times. However, Fletcher is on the side of his mother, and her father is in the hospital. I don't want my mother to worry about me because she used to suffer from mental illness in the past. There was no one around to turn to. In the end, I couldn't talk to anyone and had no choice but to put up with unreasonable treatment every day. If I'm at home, it's hard to stay at home because I'm always told what I should do. But I give all the money I earn to my mother-in-law, and of course I don't have any pocket money from Fletcher, so I can't kill time outside. In addition, my mother-in-law sometimes complained that I was late coming home because I was doing the housework on behalf of my mother-in-law, who did not do housework, and I couldn't go home. I couldn't buy new clothes or go to the hairdresser, so my body and mind were in tatters every day. Sometimes I was looking forward to going to the public bath with the little money I had left on hand after work, but she would complain if I cut corners on housework, and I had financial problems. I couldn't afford to go to the public bath every day, and my body gradually began to itch and other ailments. One day, when I was going to the park to use the restroom as usual, I saw my father-in-law. Speaking of which, when I remembered the schedule in my head, my father-in-law, who was recovering from his physical condition, said that today was the day that the hospital gave him permission to stay overnight. I was going to pick him up later, but apparently my father-in-law came back here on his own. He had a gentle smile that did not change in his smile, and talked to me in the same way as before. "Dallery, what's going on here?" I was about to go to the bathroom. "Is there a toilet at home? Is it out of order?" "No, it's not like that." "Something happened to you." If I tell my kind father-in-law about how I've been treated at home now, he will surely be worried. I didn't want to worry about it. However, I couldn't stand the urge to urinate, so I told him what I had done so far. I'm not a family member, so I've been told not to use the restroom or bath at home. What? My mother-in-law is a clean freak, so she can't stand me using the bathroom and bath at home. Doesn't Fletcher say anything when you say that? He is on good terms with his moth, so he didn't do anything. I see. With a big sigh, my father-in-law bowed to me. Let's go home together. I'm sorry for what they've done so far. My father-in-law's words almost loosened my tense feelings. I managed to hold back the tears that were about to spill out, and after finishing the bathroom for the time being, I went home with him. He returned home and gathered my mother-in-law and Fletcher in the living room. At first, my mother-in-law was happy to see my father-in-law return home after a long absence, but she tilted her head to my father-in-law, who looked strange. I've heard about it from Dallery. What are you talking about? Don't play dumb. You didn't let her use the toilet or bath at home because she wasn't our family. That's Tellity. On top of that, you took away all of Dallery's salary, didn't you? Why do you know that? My mother-in-law glared at me. However, my father-in-law got between me and her and hid it from her. You should reflect on what you have done to Dallery. Yes, Dallery is a stranger, but she is the one who married our son and tried to be our family. Instead of treating her with gratitude, you treated her so badly. I think we originally became a family of strangers. She is a stranger, hence you need to take care of her more. But what are you doing right now? And Fletcher. What? Fletcher's body shakes when his name is called. You're Dallery's husband, and you're the wrong person to protect. Don't protect your mother forever. Protect your wife. That's the husband's job. But no excuse. You're an adult. It's time to get away from your parents. Perhaps completely frightened by the appearance of his father, who is calm but certainly angry, Fletcher glances at his mother. I didn't mean to disrespect her. Right, Mom? At his snarling words, his mother looked at him for a moment, and then immediately turned to my father-in-law. No, Fletcher said that if Dallery doesn't use the bathroom or bath at home, the water bill will go up, and the daughter-in-law's salary is ours, so I'm going to take all of it. I said I couldn't do that, poor thing, but he insisted. Hey Mom, what are you talking about? I didn't want to do it, but I just did it because he told me to. Don't say anything arbitrary. You said you can't stand Dallery using the plumbing. It was you who started saying that if you could use Dallery's salary freely, you'd go out more. Well, I can't believe that you're going to start saying that to your own mother-in-law, and Fletcher began to rub sins against each other. I couldn't keep up with the scene in front of me, and I could only stare blankly without saying anything. The two of them, who tell each other that they are not bad, have no vestiges of the good relationship they used to have, and they are ugly. Next to him, his father-in-law sighed heavily. Enough, I know how you guys feel. Without a single apology to Dallery, tell each other that you're not bad, and know a little shame. I get both of you out of the house right now. He said so quickly, kicked my mother-in-law and Fletcher out of the house. After that, he exchanged with my mother-in-law and Fletcher several times, but instead of reflecting on it, she only complained to me and my father-in-law about the grudge of being kicked out of the house. My father-in-law and I, who were completely disgusted by my mother-in-law and Fletcher, decided to divorce and isolate ourselves. When the divorce was decided, I was called by my father-in-law, and he bowed politely to me. The reason why my wife has become so selfish and has come to act like a selfish face, and why Fletcher's life has come to revolve around her mother, is because I have lived my life with work as my priority. The other day I was talking to her about my family, but I wasn't a good enough husband or father to talk about my family. Because I was a husband who didn't care about my family, I wanted Fletcher to have a good family with Dallery by using me as a teacher. Father-in-law: what a selfish story. I'm so sorry, Dallery. It's my fault, and I apologize for that, but I'm going to give this house to you. Father-in-law: please raise your head. It's not your fault. Besides, this house is also an important house for you, full of memories, isn't it? But I want you to apologize for something, because we really bothered you. Then would you like to have a meal with me sometime? Is that okay with you? Yes, I lost my father when I was young, so I thought of you as my real father. That's why I want to continue to get along with you. He nodded at my words with a troubled and joyful expression. Then I moved into an apartment and started living alone. My father-in-law, who was safely discharged from the hospital, seems to have started living at home, and I'm often invited by my father-in-law to enjoy eating while talking about the latest situation. As we talked, he told me that he wanted to meet my mother. When I think about it, he only met my mother at the wedding, and he and my mother have not seen each other since then. I divorced Fletcher, but I thought it might be a good idea for the three of us to have a meal together once if I was going to continue my relationship with my father-in-law in the future. Then, about 3 months after the divorce, me, my mother, and my father-in-law had a meal. Unexpectedly, my mother and father-in-law seemed to get along, and the dinner party ended happily. I couldn't meet the two families before the marriage because of his physical condition and my mother's schedule, and I was only able to give a simple greeting at the wedding. That's why we rarely had conversations, but my mother and father-in-law were close in age and had similar hobbies, so they talked quite a bit. And before I knew it, they were meeting without me. The two of them quickly became closer, and now my father-in-law is really my father. I can still see the two of them, who were a little embarrassed to ask it's okay to marry. At that time, I was so surprised, smiling, and happy that I couldn't help but cry. My mother also moved out of the countryside, and I moved out of my apartment, and the three of us lived together in that house. On the other hand, Fletcher and his mother-in-law, according to what I heard from my father-in-law, managed to live together. It seems that Fletcher is working hard to support his mother, but his relationship with his mother, who is selfish and complains about this and that, seems to be deteriorating day by day. Since I was gone, my mother-in-law's Brent seems to have turned all its attention to Fletcher. Recently, it seems that he lost the energy to work due to the stress of working overtime and the stress of living with his mother at home, and quit his job without consulting his mother. It seems that his mother was angry with him, but she said that he could not live without someone working, so she raised her heavy waist and her mother-in-law began to work. She has always been a full-time housewife and has a naive side, seems to be repeatedly unable to get the job she wants, and repeatedly retiring as soon as she gets a job. Even now, my father-in-law is contacted by Fletcher and my mother-in-law from time to ask if he can help them, but he refused all of them. My father-in-law looked at me and my mother and said gently, "My mother and Fletcher are my old family, but it is this family that I have to cherish now. Besides," he continues, "if I could teach them anything, it would be to go through the hard work and make them aware of their pain. If we were a little kinder to people, maybe there would be someone who could help those two people." My father-in-law said a little sadly, "I'm sure there will be many difficulties in the future, but I would like to cultivate a heart that cares about others without forgetting to be kind to others. And I want to build a kind, gentle, and wonderful family like my mother and father-in-law."